are you?
Hey, I'm
Hey,
good.
long time no see.
I know. I was having trouble accessing the link for some reason. It wasn't working for me. And then just so you know, my internet's like I'm on the second floor, so I don't get a lot of, for my first floor, I don't get a lot of reception. So I just ordered one of those internet extenders.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so because my daughter's using internet, I'm using internet, so it's just so if we get knocked off, here's a fair warning.
You just didn't like the question, ran away. No,
So
I get it. In
yeah.
Arizona, we get monsoons in the summer,
Oh yeah.
and so like the whole city will go down at
Ooh,
one time. Yeah.
ooh, but monsoons
So,
are gross because doesn't it make it like humid or hot kind of?
yeah.
Ugh.
So they say like Arizona, it's a dry heat. It's not because it'll be 120, which makes it rain. And then like even last 2 nights ago, it rained really hard and I went out as soon as it stopped and the pavement was already dry because
Oh,
yeah, it's just gross and why do I
just
live here? I don't know.
evaporates. So
But it's
so
cheaper than California. That's why.
yeah, I know. I used to live in another state and I know the difference. Like it's a lot cheaper in so many places, but California's home,
Yeah,
for
I
me.
I I miss it. But then I
How
go
long
back
have
and then I'm like, no.
how long have you been in Arizona?
Probably 20 years now.
20 years?
It's
Oh,
nice. It's
yeah.
especially traffic. People out here complain about traffic. And I'm like, it's moving. Like, it's awesome out here. Like 30
You're like,
minutes from one side of the city to the other. I'm like, this is cake.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I know. So I mean, I haven't like just besides Facebook, like really talked to you that much, even in school, because I know you were like super, super shy. You're
No
like
one would believe
really,
that now.
really, really shy, very reserved, very, kind of on your own. I kind of was on my own too, but I also was pretty social. I tried to be, um, yeah.
I
So
think it's kind of weird because like I see like TV shows and how like the high school kids interact, how they're mean to each other. And now that I'm teaching, I'll talk to kids about them. They're like, no, it's exactly like that. I'm like, I don't remember us being that way because like if someone got out of line and tried to be like Queen Bee, we put them in their place. And
yeah.
like I don't think we went through that.
Yeah, I think there's probably variations of it. And I know bullying now is different in the aspect that, we have the internet, there's
Mm,
other forms of bullying like bullying. But I do remember it happening, but again, I was very oblivious and it was because of
yeah.
my I was very naive. So, with growing up, my eyes were kind of open. I was still like they were still kind of closed. But now you grow up and you see the big picture kind of a thing. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think it might have been like being a little more independent. Like I think anytime you could just walk away and it's not as big of a deal. Whereas
Yeah.
if you're really in the group, like I can't say that like there weren't some times where I'm like, well, how come they're not talking to me? Like, but having at least a little bit of that ability to step away and not have it destroy your world is kind of a benefit.
Yeah, no, of course. Unfortunately, in the adult world, it still happens. I see it, sadly, I still see it.
I'm
And
the
I'm,
bully now.
oh, oh my gosh. So you're teaching. Where are you teaching?
I teach for a charter school.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
basically a credit mill. I'm using it so that I can do my MBA. Like it's really not that much work.
Okay.
So I'm doing my MBA right now, so it gives me time to actually study and but
Nice.
like I'm starting my own school. I'm starting a private school because in Arizona, and it's kind of horrible. So if you're a private school, you don't have to follow any rules. You do whatever you want.
Okay. And
But
you
it
get the
also
funding.
yeah.
Oh.
But the good thing about it, and that's why I want to do it, is now you're not teaching to the test. You don't have to do the standardized tests. You don't have to do the curriculum that they set out. Like, you could teach. And so I've actually been able to recruit a lot of teachers, because it's a lot of teachers who want to teach instead of, like, even right now, we have to do so many reports, and I can be with a student who needs help, who's actually advocating for themselves, and I'll have someone tap me on the shoulder, and because we have a very strict schedule, and they're like, no, you're supposed to be grading now. No, you're supposed to be doing your T9 report. And it's like, but they're doing math. They haven't done math for 2 years. No, you need to go do a report. I'm like, this is
Wow.
not cool. So,
Oh, that's where you work for, like you work for someone else too.
right now I'm at a different campus, but it was that way last year. This
Uh-huh.
one's a lot easier. Last year I had 150 students.
Oh,
This year they keep asking me if I'm okay, and I'm like, I have 50 students. Like, it's cake. Like, I
but
went from 150 to 50.
what grades?
High school.
High school?
So
Okay.
that's why I'm
250.
the bully, because I've tried doing little
Oh.
kids. High school students, you can scare them. Like, I'm usually wearing a suit. I usually don't smile. So I kind of intimidate them.
Uh-huh.
Little kids, you can't scare. They're so innocent and nothing scares them. And so it's like chaos. And I'm like, that's not for me. I like
Yeah.
I like being able to be the mean guy and having students like do what they're
So you
told.
are the bully.
I am, but I use it a lot. So like our population too is like the little homies or the little wannabe homies.
Okay.
So they usually assign them to me because I kind of break them, because they try to do the tough guy thing and it doesn't work on me. But they still want they want that attention. So it's
Yeah.
knowing when to give it to them and sneaking in like kind of life lessons. Like, hey, I get that everyone around you says this is the way to live, but there's enough. And usually the way I do it too, and I mean, I love wearing suits, but the reason I do it is to show them there's a different way. Because then they
Right.
start asking about, like, someone always makes a crack about teachers not making money. I'm like, I'm not a teacher. Like, I own my own businesses. And they're like,
Oh.
what? And so then we start talking about business and how to make money legitimately. The school I was at last year, like, a lot of the kids wanted to be tattoo artists. I'm like, that's awesome. Let's set you up in a business to be a tattoo artist. And
Yeah.
so I had like 10, 15 kids that would show up. We had like how to start a tattoo parlor class.
Oh, that's cool. That's
So
cool. And I also get a lot of students who say, yeah, I want to, I like art, I like tattoos, I want to be a tattoo artist. And as a counselor perspective, I start chiming in and start saying like, well, if you like art, you might want to study art, the foundations of art. Like, there's different kinds of art. There's like penciling and like acrylics and, just so many. It's a broad spectrum when you're speaking about art. So I kind of gear them towards like how to draw, because there's also, you don't want to be a crappy tattoo artist. You want to know what you're doing and you want to know how to draw, because I've seen those memes where they're like horrible tattoos.
yeah.
You can open a business but you don't have the skill, so you have to build that skill. Especially as students, they're like seeing these tattoos that are amazing, but that takes years of practice. It's not
Yeah.
like they're going to wake up and be a tattoo artist, and have it all made. So that's my perspective, where I start working with the kids and kind of, whether it's college, university, vocational, whatever kind of training they want to get, as long as they get the foundation, the skills for their art.
So
Mm-hmm.
so I guess let's go into formal interview mode. I gotta use the NPR voice now. So no. No. So like I know like with school, like when you're 5 years old, they ask you, what do you want to do when you grow up? And it's usually policeman, teacher. No one thinks of like all these other things. So like no one thinks really kind of guidance counselor. How do you feel? Oh, maybe not.
Hold
Maybe
on.
I'm wrong on that. Let me go for it.
Let me just before we keep going, because this title guidance counselor is no longer. Guidance
Oh,
counselor is like a bad word in our profession now. We're school counselors. School in like grades or academics that much anymore. Now we're school counselors, where there's a big growth in this profession, where you see a lot of the hashtags like school counselors not cops, because we are
yeah.
dipping into social emotional development, college and career planning, and academics too. So it's not just academics, which way back in the day, that's what guidance counselors came from. But now we're considered professional school counselors.
So you're basically a social worker for the school.
No, actually, we're
No?
not, because we have social
For
workers.
two.
Yeah, we actually have social workers in our district. So just
Oh,
to,
that's awesome.
yeah. I mean, Pomona Unified, the school district that I work for, is the second largest to LAUSD. So we're huge. So we do need the social work aspect. We have a lot of foster youth, we have homeless. So they take care of those kind of, rounds in their lives. But we're talking about, like, for school counselors, we're working with the student to connect them, obviously, with the teachers, with the community, with their parents, bring them in. And then those three domains that I mentioned, social, emotional development, college and career planning, and academics, those are our main domains as a school counselor per our, it's the American School Counseling Association. So it's a pretty grown profession, and those are our bases for working with students.
So how do you, like, with the students, like, how would you normally approach something? Um, I think coming into this talk with you, like, I'm coming in ignorant because we don't have a lot of that out where I'm at, which would be awesome. Like, I think we need,
Yeah.
but with funding and everything, it's always about like teachers. We don't hear about the important like team players. So like, how would you approach a student? If I'm a student and like, I don't know what I want to do in life. And a lot of times I think, at least we're out here in Tucson, it's no, you should know what you want to do when you're a freshman. You're supposed to know. Like,
Yeah.
what if I came to you and said, like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah. So one of the things that we really try to focus on is connecting with the student. I think once you get that connection with the student, you get that buy-in with the student where they're more real with you, and you can be, you have to kind of lower your own guard too, to a point where they're going to be like, oh, I don't have to be scared of this person, and just connecting with them and kind of knowing their background, because there's a lot of barriers. Again, in our population where I work with, we have single parents, we have parents with immigrant parents, incarcerated parents. So there's a lot of barriers there that, we can talk about, and then, kind of reminding them, yeah, you can do it, because sometimes they're like, I don't think I can, or they have this perception like they're not going to get anywhere. But we try to work with them, and connect them, even with services that we have with our district. We have mentorships, we have programs that come in and work with students with either tutoring, they need that community. There's a lot of connection in Pomona right now, so that's pretty big. So we have those resources and those outlets for the students. But if a student comes to me and say, hey, I don't know what I want to do, because usually they don't come tell us that, because we're asking them. That's part of our curriculum, part of our teaching, let's talk about this, so we have things in place to help them. We have, even interest profilers that we use to help them kind of learn about themselves. It'll give them like a summary based on their answers, and then we kind of take it from there, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so that's just one of the first things that we do, is try to connect with the student.
So they made us take a personality test at work, and I'm the evil villain. No, but I think you're absolutely right. It's that connection, and I think that's a lot of what's missing, is we're so focused on the scores. that we forget that there's a person. And I'm a
Yeah.
data scientist. Like I do numbers all day. I joke around that like I prefer numbers to people. But really like
Oh, okay.
it's not a number. Like there's a person, there's a little kid who doesn't know. Like I know right now we have someone who's very bright. Um, I think sometimes we forget she's a teenager. She doesn't have all the
Oh,
answers.
yeah.
Um, I
Yeah.
think that's something to look at too, is like we forget, we want the system to be the system and we kind of forget that human touch.
Yeah, yeah, the system has really changed a lot. As far as you had asked, there's kids usually like in kindergarten when they're 5, you ask them what do you want to be, and they want to be like cops or whatever, and that's kind of where we're expanding with as school counselors, because honestly, if we look back, because we went to the same high school, we went to the same, you know, elementary school,
Oh
I don't.
wow, we did.
Yeah, yeah, we did. I was there. I started going to our elementary in 4th grade. So from 4th grade and then middle and then high school. And honestly, like, I don't remember my school counselor. I don't remember meeting with my school counselor, not even in high school. I was one of those kids that fell between the cracks. I wasn't like,
Mhm.
I didn't have really good grades. I didn't have horrible grades. So I was one of the forgotten. So I kind of never met my counselor. And now that system has changed so dramatically to where we're adding counselors to the middle schools, we're adding counselors to elementary schools, and our lessons, because we teach lessons on future, like let's start planning about college starting in kindergarten, believe it or not. Now the kids are like being exposed, they're getting that exposure, because I was first generation high school. My parents didn't go to school here, and then first generation, in college, and then even to get a step further to get my master's, and I didn't have that exposure, and I did all that later in life. But now we're really going into kindergarten, doing lessons, 1st grade, even with the foundations of becoming, the most um, supported human that we can become, starting with the Maslow. We have to, make sure that
I
we
love him.
belong, that, so a lot of our lessons starting in kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, even up to high school, it has to do with belonging, getting to know yourself, feeling safe and secure. So we do our lessons starting in kindergarten, believe it or not. Our action plan, which are lessons we've actually created since the last 5 years that I've been with the district. We've created those lessons going all the way down to kindergarten, which is amazing, and we're still growing. We started with, if I can give you a little history about Pomona, they started with about like, I want to say like less than 30, 20 something counselors. When I came in, they started hiring a little bit more. I was one of the first elementary counselors. We created a lot of the curriculum, and now we have about 67 counselors. So we have been really focusing our profession growing with our population, because we think it's that important.
So let me ask you this then. As being one of those high school students that fell through the cracks,
Mm.
to now being one of the foundations of a program that's keeping students from falling through the cracks. I mean, how does that make you feel personally?
I remember a lot of things, when I was in high school, and I kind of put myself there sometimes, and I try to reach out to those students, and we really work really hard to, close that gap, not only in learning, but with counseling wise, and making sure that we help them develop. So, I feel amazing. And, this is one of the reasons why I love what I do, is because I didn't have it. I
Yeah.
didn't have it in high school. So that really helps me focus on those students that think, oh, I didn't think you were going to reply to my email, or I didn't think you were going to really understand.
Oh, there you are. There you are.
Yeah, I warned you.
It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. And I'm glad you mentioned like back in the day because for me it was a little different. I remember my counselor, Morgan, and I remember being told how I wasn't gonna like pretty much that I wasn't gonna amount to anything.
Wow. Oh, I'm so
Uh,
sorry. That's horrible.
but one of those things that and we can start wrapping up on this. I know you still have a lot of schoolwork to do. I actually I have a test myself I have to take in 30 minutes.
Oh, okay.
I myself got started late too. Like I'm 45 and working on my master's right now. And I know a lot of the kids I work with probably aren't going to do anything once they get their diploma for a while. So what would you say to those kids, the ones that, because I think we do put a lot of emphasis on like this progression. You do your high school, you immediately go to college. What would you say to those kids that aren't going to go that straight path,
You
that
know,
might wait?
yeah, it was kind of like, go to high school, go to college, go on, these are the steps you're supposed to do. But now, even more so with the pandemic, I mean, now
Yeah.
it's like, okay, let's focus on what you need to do. If this isn't the time, just know these are your options. So for me as a counselor, I would explain to them, you can do this path. You don't have to go to university. There's community college, there's vocational training, there's on-the-job training, there's military, there's other, the workforce. Let's talk about the workforce. Even if it's an entry-level job, let's look at where you can get to. There's a lot of jobs out there that you don't need a degree to get there, but the security, we have to think about
Yeah.
that. So I do talk
Yeah.
about security. I say, by the time you're up there, and then they, let's say there's an employer that says, okay, like, who here has a degree? And you're like, that can be a downfall. So just know, I'm very real with them. With the students, I'm very real with them and tell them these are your options. It's up to you. And everybody kind of on their time, because sometimes that motivation does come later. It did for me. It came later. I didn't get my master's till I was 40, but I've been in
Wait, I
education
thought you were
since I
only
was
28.
18. Oh yeah, right. Dang, man, I messed up. Can you edit that part?
Yeah, well, it'll be really smooth too. It'll be like when I was, and then the robot voice would come in.
Beep.
28. Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. No, but I've been in education since I was 18. Right away, I got a job in a local district, and since then I've been working in, as a teacher's aide, and I even started teaching reading. So it's been like kind of a progression of different jobs throughout, in education. But this actual profession as a school counselor kind of came to me later, when I was like, yeah, I could do it, and sometimes it just takes life to kind of give you that
Yeah.
little shove, and you're like, yeah, that's what I want to do. And I sometimes share that with my students, because if they're not ready, they're gonna, I don't want to set them up for failure. I always tell them that. I don't want you to be doing something you're not ready for. When you're
Yeah.
ready, you're gonna know. But at the same time, start doing something, because you're gonna still evolve as a human. You're gonna evolve. You're gonna figure out what your likes and your dislikes are. Just because you're not ready right now doesn't mean that you're not gonna do it later. It'll come to you. So that's what I tell them if they're not ready to go on the procession that we're so used to, or what society has always told us. It's very different now. So we do open up those options and talk about that. Of course, I feel so bad that you were told that, as your counselor had told you that, but I would never ever tell a student, you always have to look at what's the positive of the student, and I've always like felt so bad, I've heard teachers like at conferences like, your kid did this and they're doing this, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I've always felt really bad, but always looking for the positive in the student. They might fail, they might be like not the best student, and like kind of be behavior wise not the best either, but they're at school every day. So what does that tell you? They want to be at school, right? So at least you can look at, well, you come to school every day. That's awesome. You know, there's a lot of people that don't even make it. So we tried to look at the positive side of things. So yeah, those are the kind of conversations that I would have with students, especially if they don't know what they want to do.
I try to add on too, like I'm 28 and I still don't know what I want to do. Like I think it's kind of that we're told you have a job, you stay in it forever. And it's like, well, no, I want to do that, or I don't want to do that. Or there's still jobs out there I don't know about. Like I didn't know anything about that. If you asked me in high school if I knew what a regional economic director was, oh, but it's a thing. And it's like, there's all these things you don't know. And it's exciting.
Yeah, you know, and that's kind of, you know, your brain's still developing and you're learning about yourself. Like I keep telling the kids, you're going to evolve. You're still going to grow. You know, I don't see myself as a high school counselor forever, honestly. You know, even at my young age, there's still a lot of opportunity out there. I seriously would like to see myself maybe in the university or the colleges, you know, kind of in the same field, but maybe not just in high school all the time. You know, I really do see something else.
That's awesome. No, and I think it's we have to grow, and even though if you move on doesn't mean you can't offer that back. You have a new experience to go back to high schools and visit and say, this is how this side is.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Well, thank you for talking with us. You actually, I know there may have been a little hesitation, but you had a lot to offer. I think the listeners all 12 of them are going to get a lot from you.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, and I always encourage even my students, you know, that really are even respectful, like, oh, I think you know, I tell them maybe you'll want to be a counselor one day, you know, kind of a thing. So you never know. You know, I actually have, you know, my own daughter that wants to go into the master's in counseling too. So and she's starting her career in education this year. So a couple more years and she'll get it, you know, that's her plan. So hopefully she'll continue, you know, with that. Mm-hmm.
I'm not feeling 28 anymore.
Maybe I gave away too much of what to kind of figure out.
Sometimes I'll see the birthdays of students and I'm like, that can't be right. And then I do the math and I'm like, oh, wow. Yeah. Just old.
Yep.
Well, it's been great catching up with you. And yeah, I hope we talk more, because I think professionally we have a lot in common. And It sounds like you're doing great things out there, and probably definitely use some of that to get out here for our school systems.
Yes, definitely. We should keep in touch. You know, we have the same mindset of growing and continuing. So I think that's great.
Who knew? From two fall through the cracks students from.
You know, that's so true. I seriously, I mean, it's crazy. Even though we grew up together, probably known each other since we were like, what, 10, 11 years old, and we never really connected even, you know, as much, you know. And sometimes life has these ways to bring people together, even through professions. So that's awesome.
God, I never wanted to be a teacher. But it happens.
Here you are.
Here I am, and I actually enjoy it. Probably for the same reasons you do. I love, you know, as we talk, like the students that fall through the cracks, like the high achievers are the high achievers, they're fine. Unfortunately, there's some kids that just aren't going to get it, or get it now, or from me. It's that quiet one that has been told that they can't do it, that I love, you know, going after and seeing that light bulb go on of like, oh, I can do that. And like, that's why I put up with all the reports, and that's why I put up with the horrible bosses. And that's why I put up with, like, I tell my school, like, kind of joking, like, go ahead and fire me. Like, I can make more money doing other stuff, but that's why I do it. And like, you know, the kid who's been told she can't do anything is showing up to class and realize all she had to do was bring a notebook to write
Yeah.
down notes. And and she'll ask, like, can I use it on a test? I'm like, yeah. I'm like,
Why not?
real life, no one stops me somewhere and says, hey, you have to take a test, you can't use notes. I'm
Right.
at work, I
Right.
can pull a book. Like, computer does everything. So it's
Yeah.
seeing those
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah, that's true. Well, that's awesome.
Well, you go out there, you go save lives, and not be a guidance counselor. So yeah, I learned something today. We don't.
Yeah, and we're not social workers.
Yeah, my wife's one, so I had to say that because she was
She
right
is.
there.
Oh, she is. And I, as much as I respect their, their profession, they have their own masters in social work, which is, it's very similar. We're in the same, family of professions, but they do deal with a lot more, I feel like a lot more like personal situations with the students. So I do give props to your wife. It's really tough. It is really tough, but again, I was glad that I was able to outline exactly what we do, because I know that they kind of clump us all together,
Yeah.
and there's so much that we can do in so many different parts of the students, lives, that social workers do an amazing job for those students that really, really need it.
Well,
Great job.
all right. Well, go have a great day, and again,
Okay,
thank
you
you.
too. Of course, anytime. You take care.
You too. Bye.
Okay, bye.